at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christies. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christies tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 6 o'clock and I'm Michelle Dewberry. Apparently the Tories are a byword for incompetence and division, and they no longer represent the centre ground. That is according to one Tory MP, Natalie Elphicke, who today has defected to the Labour Party. Do you think that MPs should be able to defect with such ease? And what about a by-election by default? I would support one of those. Would you? And a week is a very long time in politics, isn't it? It is if you're Monty Panesar, because do you remember we were talking about him standing for the Workers' Party? Well, he has now quit. What do you make to that? And I also want to ponder tonight, why is the organisation on the right of politics so lacking? Do you know the reason for that or not? And also today, the former Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, has outlined a 36-point plan as to how we should be dealing with immigration. You've got caps in the tens of thousands proposed. How many times have we heard that? As well as separating the Home Office. Your thoughts on that? And a story caught my eye this week about a farmer who's been accused of shooting and killing a suspected burglar. And it's got me pondering, how far should you be able to go when it comes to defending your property? All of that to come and more. But before we get stuck in, let's cross live for tonight's latest news headlines.
Michelle, thank you very much and good evening to you. It's just gone 6 o'clock and leading the news tonight, another of Rishi Sunak's MPs has defected to Labour, the second in under just 2 weeks. Natalie Elphicke announced her decision just 2 minutes before Prime Minister's questions this afternoon. The Dover MP said that Rishi Sunak's government is chaotic and claims that Labour has changed. Dan Poulter made the same switch less than a fortnight ago, while the Conservatives also lost hundreds of councillors and the Blackpool South by-election last week. Speaking shortly after making that announcement to defect, Miss Elphicke said a Labour government promises a brighter future.
In 2019, the Conservatives stood on a manifesto that was very much centre ground. But under Rishi Sunak, they've abandoned the centre ground and broken many election promises. Meanwhile, under Keir Starmer, Labour have changed. And I think that change is going to bring a much better future for our country. And that's why I was so keen to join the Labour Party and play my part in bringing that important future forward.
Banking group TSB will close 36 branches and cut 250 jobs across the business as more customers are opting for online banking. Most of the lost positions will be in the bank's fraud department, central operations and high street branches. About 96% of transactions now take place outside of a branch, while in-store transactions have fallen by 34% over the past 4 years. And just a reminder, if you were watching on TV there, those appear to have been the wrong pictures. Planned strikes by hundreds of workers at Heathrow Airport have been called off today after a new offer was made in a bid to resolve a dispute over the outsourcing of jobs. Members of the Unite Union were due to walk out tomorrow morning until Monday. Workers, including security guards and passengers assistance staff, will now be balloted on the new offer. A father whose teenage daughter who took her own life after watching harmful content on social media says a draft plan to protect children online doesn't go far enough. The media regulator Ofcom says platforms must take action to stop their algorithms recommending harmful content to children or face significant fines. But Ian Russell, part of Bereaved Families for Online Safety, wants to see those safety codes strengthened to make sure that the world's biggest online platforms, he says, better protect children online. And finally, some royal news before we head back to Michelle. Prince Harry has tonight arrived at St Paul's Cathedral for a service there of thanksgiving to mark the 10th anniversary of the Invictus Games. The Duke of Sussex is giving a reading there in front of representatives from participating nations and sick and injured service personnel and veterans. Less than 2 miles away, the King has been holding a first garden party of the season at Buckingham Palace. But during Harry's brief visit to the UK this week, the King's full programme means the pair won't be meeting. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with another update at 7 o'clock. In the meantime, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks for that. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. There is a lot I want to get stuck into with you guys tonight. Also, one of the things that I've noticed, did you see that story about Astrazeneca? They have announced that they're going to be withdrawing globally their vaccine. The company says, of course, for commercial reasons. And it goes on to state how many lives they believe the vaccine has saved. But, of course, many of you might know that there is a massive class action claim going through the courts at the moment, which has seen Astrazeneca finally admit that, yes, in what they say are very rare cases, the vaccine can indeed cause TTS, which is basically blood clots. I do just want to say, I think that the way that so many people who have been harmed by these vaccines have just been let down in this country is absolutely shameful. They have been abused, they have been ignored, they have been shamed, they have been vilified. And I just want to say that I, for one, hope that they manage to get justice. Alongside me tonight to get stuck into lots of different things, I have the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani, and the political commentator and social worker, Yosef David. Good evening to both of you.
Evening.
I've never had you on the programme whilst I've been in.
It's a pleasure to be here.
You snuck in whilst I was on holiday once. I seem to remember watching it back, so you're very welcome tonight, as are all of you at home too. You can get in touch with me all the usual ways. gbviews@gbnews.com is the email address, or of course you can hop onto the website and go to gbnews.com/yoursay and talk to me there, or you can tweet or X me. But wherever you are, however you want to talk to me tonight, you are very, very welcome. Now, did you see the news happening just about kind of midday-ish during PMQs, or at the start of PMQs? We had another defection, this time from the Tory party over to Labour. Just watch.
Well, in 2019, the Conservatives stood on a manifesto that was very much centre ground. But under Rishi Sunak, they've abandoned the centre ground and broken many election promises. Meanwhile, under Keir Starmer, Labour have changed. And I think that change is going to bring a much better future for our country. And that's why I was so keen to join the Labour Party and play my part in bringing that important future forward.
Okay. Yeah, indeed. So that's the Tory MP, Natalie Elphick, from Dover and Deal. I've got to say, I don't actually agree with this. I think crossing the floor, in my view, because it suits you as an individual and what you perhaps want to achieve in your future, is pretty damn shameful, actually, because it's a snub to all of those people that turned out and gave you the cross in the box. And yes, I can hear you now saying, oh, Michelle, educate yourself. We vote for the person, not the party. Well, that's fascinating. But we put the parties on there. And, of course, those people are selected to represent said parties and all of the policies that go with it. So if you ask me my humble opinion, I would say that any defection should trigger a by-election. And yes, I'm not biased in that view. I apply that whichever side you're moving from and to. And yes, I would involve and include people like Lee Anderson in that as well. What says you at home? But Aaron, what do you say?
Well, just watching that clip again, I was a bit gutted, because given the words coming out of her mouth, given what she'd done, she should be wearing some makeup, a wig and a little flower with a water pistol hidden in it, because she's behaving like a clown. This is the same MP who called Sir Keir Starmer Sir Keir Softy. She said he wants open borders. This is the MP for Dover.
While you're talking, I'm going to play some of these tweets. I'll put some of the tweets up on the screen whilst Aaron's talking away, where she criticises the Labour's
Sorry, I didn't know. Maybe I've ruined the shtick.
No,
here.
You have not ruined anything. Keep going.
And I just find it utterly ridiculous. Look, you can have views one way or another. That's absolutely fine. But what Natalie Elphicke here has embodied is the indisputable fact that the majority of the political class in this country believe in absolutely nothing except the next paycheck and their own hide. And I suspect she's made this choice because she wants maybe a peer role in a Starmer government, or maybe an NGO or a Quango, because she's thinking about her future.
I do have to say, so she said, apparently, she's not going to run again. So the previous PPC from the last one, that's the person that's going to stand in that seat. And she also said that she has not been offered a peerage, but there was talk of some kind of housing role. I think that's the latest line on it. Where are you on this?
Well, call me a cynic, but I doubt she's converted to Labour ideology so close to a general election. This is somebody who stood in Dover. This is a seat where migration is a big issue. She's now joining a party, which she very rightly said believes in open borders. She's let down the people of her constituency. And if you stand on a ticket, if you campaign with a particular party, yes, you're being elected, somebody puts a cross on your name, but they're electing you and the party. And I think something has to change. And this very much reminds me, in stark contrast to the last time I think somebody acted with integrity and they left their party, they called a by-election, and they actually won it. And this was Douglas Carswell all those years ago. I think it was in 2015. So it can be done, and very often the electorate will take the opportunity to choose again if they've moved with you on the issue. But it's simply immoral and dishonest to take the mandate that you received at a general election and so close to the next election, leave maybe with hope of a peerage.
Nicholas said, if someone defects from one party to another, then yes, there should be a by-election. Let me just ask you this, though, Nicholas. Do you think the time frame should bear any relevance on this? Because, of course, people on the other side of that argument will say, well, hold on a minute, Michelle, by-elections cost a lot of money. And if actually there's going to be a general election in a matter of weeks or months, then is that just wasted money down the drain? So, Nicholas, tell me your thoughts. And is anyone out there actually in this constituency? Did you vote either for or against her? And how do you feel by this defection? And I think Labour, they've been criticised a lot, Aaron, because one of the things that Natalie was saying, as you've just been hearing there, is that she's saying she thinks that the Tories are neglecting the centre ground, whereas people on the other side are saying, I've heard people say, well, hang on, Natalie is quite to the right of the Tories, so if the Labour Party are embracing her, what does that say about the Labour Party's direction of travel? She says the Labour Party are the party for the centrists now.
Well, I think she's an opportunist, and I think Keir Starmer's very happy to work with opportunists because he's also an opportunist. A nice analogy here is if Zara Sultana joined the Conservative Party. You know, she is on the furthest right reaches of the Conservative Party, Natalie Elphicke, and she's now been embraced by the opposition. The point of a two-party system, and by the way, I support PR, I think we need more parties in politics, is that you have clear, distinctive lines between them and you have clear alternatives. I'm not happy with these people. These people stand for something profoundly different. I want rid of the status quo. And I think this really underscores something we've talked about many times on here, the uni party. You know, we are really looking at fundamentally, as Mr Galloway puts it, I know he's had a tough week, we might be talking about that in a moment too.
We most certainly will, worry not.
He has a great way with words, and one of the phrases he loves to use is, you know, two cheeks to the same backside. And I think this really highlights that fundamental reality.
I've seen some horrendous imagery today of, I dread to think whose buttocks they are, with pictures of Keir Starmer on one buttock and Rishi Sunak on the other. I won't be able to unsee some of those images, but I think that is indeed a sense that many people have of this so-called uni party. We'll come on to Monty's Panesar in a minute, actually. In fact, you know what? Let's just go for it. Let's talk about it now. Because many of you, it was only about a week ago, you perhaps will remember you was watching Dewbs Co, and we were speaking about this, the cricketer who would then become the latest face of George Galloway's Workers' Party for Britain. I've got to say, I saw quite a few interviews, and I don't mean to be unkind, but he didn't really perform very well in those interviews. And there was lots of talk about this is full Gaza, and, you know, some of the placards, it was kind of the Workers' Party, full Britain, full Gaza, and all the rest of it. Anyway, so he's now quit the party. Firstly, what do you make to that?
So this is the feel-good story of the day. Monty Panesar has realised, quite frankly, what George Galloway and the the Workers' Party are all about. He was quite uncomfortable when some of Mr Galloway's quotes were put to Monty Panesar. I don't think he quite understood the level of scrutiny that comes with standing for a political party. And hats off to him, actually. He's looked at the situation, he's probably taken advice from people that he trusts, and he's decided to take a step back. It can be alluring when you become involved with a political party. You run with the ideals that they stand by. And I think by stopping and saying, actually, I don't believe in all of these different things, I am a proud Brit, and by taking a step back, there will be additional respect for him.
Because wouldn't you do the basic research before you actually say, put your colours to that mass and say, right, I'm now a representative of this party? I'm not saying what people should or should not believe in, but before you say, right, I'm going to stand for this, you should do the basic research beforehand, no?
No, absolutely, but some things can get lost in translation. If Mr Panesar is somebody who wants to advocate for Gaza, and he actually said in the article he wants to advocate for workers, and then he sees the Workers' Party, and they've just had a by-election where Gaza was a central topic, he might think this is a good avenue for my political career. And then later it comes out that there's been these quotes which are highly embarrassing. You should know that we are conditioned as human beings to agree with things that we've said already. It takes guts to turn around and say, actually, I made a mistake. And that's what he did, and I think it's worthy of praise.
I think too many people go into politics because they want to, it's like an ego thing. They want the kind of adoration. Like, if you're going to represent, you want to put yourself forward and say that you want to represent the workers, credit. I think that the workers absolutely do need some support. You should know at least the basics, though. Like, for example, what is the minimum wage or the living wage or whatever? Like, absolute core basics that would affect the workers. No?
And he didn't know that?
No. He thought, I saw, he was asked that actually on this question, on this channel, he was asked things like, what is the national living wage? And he said about 40 grand. And then they said, no, we mean like by the hour. And he said 15, which it absolutely isn't. And that's fine. Anyone, if you can pluck a random person off the street and say, what's the minimum wage? And if they don't know, that's, whatever. But if you're going to stand on a ticket of actually, representing the workers of Britain, there are some core basic facts.
There's an interesting tension there, isn't there? Because if you want career politicians, media polished, don't really have any authenticity, don't really believe in anything, somebody like Natalie Elphicke, by the looks of it, they probably give you the right answer to that sort of thing. And by the way, I agree with what you're saying here, Michelle, but it's an interesting one. If we want more people to be involved in politics, more people to be involved in public service, we're probably going to see also more people stick their foot in it and not have the right sort of media-trained message for something like that. I mean, I think, for me, the big takeaway with this story is with Galloway. By the way, I interviewed him last week. You can see that on the YouTube channel.
You created quite a stir, because you was the person that got that kind of quote from him where he was basically saying, I'm not putting words into his mouth, but it was along the lines of he didn't think that gay relationships were, quote, normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was on your interview with him.
Whilst also saying things which were very, commendable, but that is categorically what he said. And obviously that caused consternation, quite rightly. What I find with Galloway, which is so fascinating, is he's a very, very intelligent man. Clearly, you don't win 4 times in 4 different constituencies if you're stupid. He's clearly very clever. He has a command of the English language which is second to none. Is he a party builder? That's what is he somebody who can lead a party, set an example, build an organisation? He failed to do that with Respect in the mid-2000s, and I suspect we'll see something similar. I don't know. I suspect we'll see something similar with the Workers' Party, because there is this huge gap to the left of Labour right now, particularly in foreign policy.
But why wouldn't he have briefed? Monty Panesar then? Why wasn't there some kind of meet? I mean, I'm not saying he needs to know absolutely everything. Come on. No, but basics. Yeah. I'm not asking him to know, I don't know, the most intricate details of political history. I'm not saying that. But the most basic things, if you're going to put someone and you've decided to put them up on the national media, knowing the kind of questions that will be asked, to say that you're there to represent the worker without knowing something as basic as what is that minimum wage, that is surely a failure let's just be kind and say it's a failure of the person briefing.
I did not come here to defend George Galloway or the Workers' Party, but if I was in charge...
Life takes strange turns.
I would say Monty Panesar is a very well-known person, and if you can't answer the odd question, he's still going to benefit the party. So I can understand why they'd want him. What I would say is I agree with you on George Galloway's oratory. I think what Monty Panesar has seen is that you can't get 65% of a person. You can't get just the oratory. You have to take the acrimony, the arguments that always come with George Galloway, and he can't build a party. I don't think he's a builder. I think he's a polemicist. I think he's very good at getting attention, and he will make a big stink and then he'll go away like political flatulence.
This Monty Panesar, his statement said he is a proud Brit who has had the honour to represent the country at the highest level of cricket. He wants to do his bit to help others, but he recognises he's at the beginning of his journey and still learning about how politics can help people. He goes on to say he's withdrawing as a candidate. He needs more time to kind of listen and learn and shape his views and all the rest of it. And he says he wishes the party, the Workers' Party, well, but he wants to take some time to mature and find my political feet so I'm well prepared to deliver my very best when I run up to the next political wicket, he says. Let me know your thoughts on that. I just want to come back to that after the break, actually, because I found it really interesting. If you're somebody who wants to get rid of the Tories at the next election, and that's each to their own, judge, vote however you want, none of my business. But if you want to do that, there's a very slick, organised campaign that will show you how you can tactically vote and all the rest of it. If you're someone that is perhaps on the side of Gaza, and that is your key issue, and you want to get candidates that do that, there's hugely organised kind of campaign groups there. So I'm pondering, why do you think the right of politics seem to seemingly be so disorganised, so fragmented? Have you got an answer for me for that? Because I'd love to know. Give me your thoughts and I'll see you in 2.
Dewbs Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Organisations, plural, because there's loads of people doing this. The organisations are charging schools to be part of this odd league table about who's trying to outdo who when it comes to who is more trans-inclusive with the kids than the next person. There's something makes me uneasy about this.
Supposing a child comes home and says, you think, oh, I've done well today. He said, well, how have you done? He said, well, I was #1 painter, or I was #1 reader. No, I wasn't. I was made LGBT champion. This is a 4- and 5-year-old. Look, I can understand this, actually, as we develop into the secondary school. I can understand more debates taking place. I cannot understand why we have to thrust it at young children. And I think if you ask the parents, they'd be hostile to it. And what about the role the teacher has to play in all this?
Society has been one way, the pendulum is swinging the other way, and they're pushing it very far in order to kind of proliferate change. And this is probably the toughest period in that evolutionary process, because the LGBTQ+ community is saying that you've got to really rage against the machine to get people to listen. Because put it like this now, even this conversation, the whole country is listening, the whole world is listening. These are the kinds of eyeballs and ears they haven't had before. And there's going to be friction. There's going to be a locking of heads in the process to getting to a point where you establish a new equilibrium where they feel more incorporated. Like I've said, the greatest force of allies that the LGBTQ+ community has always had is heterosexual women. What you're moving towards now is doing things that is beginning to turn them from allies into people who feel that, oh, for you to thrive, I'm being deprived, and that's a problem. When they realise you're alienating allies, they will understand you've got to recalibrate to have that kind of understanding between both parties.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. There is lots that I want to cover with you, not least immigration. There's a 36-point plan that's been released today. I shouldn't laugh because I take this issue very, very seriously. I just think it's just absolutely absurd now because we have lost control. And will we ever be able to get it back? Is this 36-point plan the answer or not? I'll get into that in a few minutes. Alongside me, the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani, and the political commentator and social worker, Yosef David. Welcome back, everybody. One of the things that I was asking Aaron just before the break was how coordinated it seems to me that if you want the Tories out, there's all these different groups with high-profile people backing it. If you're a Muslim and you're really passionate about Gaza or whatever, there's a very slick campaign there. But if you're someone that wants to, I don't know, you're to the right of centre, you don't want Labour to get in or whatever, there's nothing, unless I'm missing something.
Well, there was meant to be reform, Michelle. We were talking about this non-stop for 6 months.
No, I'm talking about, like, yes, of course.
Campaigns.
Yeah, so like a tactical sense, because many people, I speak to lots of you guys at home every day, many people will say, we don't know who to vote for. What we know is we don't want Labour to get in, but do we go for the Tories or do we go for reform? Are we just going to waste votes? What is the best way to do it? And there doesn't seem to be any kind of tactics involved.
There's no tactics, no strategy, no logistics. I think all of that stuff...
Why not?
I think the right has just imploded in this country for a bunch of reasons. Some I think inevitable. I think Brexit and that fight from 2016 to 2019 really dissolved British conservatism as we know it. I think that was partly the ambition of people like Mr Farage, and they want to remake it in their image. That's going to take a while. You know, you're not going to do that in 1-2 years. That's going to take, you know, the best part of a decade. So I think British conservatism is in a very bad place. What I would say is Labour have the opportunity now over the next 5-10 years to be the sort of party of the centre-right. I know we think of them as being in the trade unions' pockets, but I think Labour and Keir Starmer view themselves really as the heirs to people like David Cameron. And then I think it's for the left, the Greens, the Workers' Party, Independents, the Labour left, and the right to recompose themselves, because there's a real opportunity here for Labour to, like I say, govern from the centre ground for a very long time. And I don't say that happily because there's many things I disagree with when it comes to Keir Starmer.
The problem is not just with the right of politics. You just said that Keir Starmer sees himself as the heir to Cameron. So he sees himself as the heir to somebody from a different party.
Yeah.
And the trouble is that they've all been Blairites since Blair. We haven't actually had a real Labour man or a real Conservative
Liz Truss
person.
What's your days? Many would say that she was to the right.
Yes, unfortunately, the system closed her down. And we didn't have an opportunity to actually see conservative economics. I would have settled for a social conservative, but we said, OK, so, you know, conservative economics, and the system closed her down. The trouble is that we're all centrists at the moment. The main parties are centrists, and I agree with you. I think Labour in the centre, we would disagree on this, but I think they're incredibly dangerous. I think that's when they can really change this country.
What are they dangerous on?
Migration.
What, you think immigration will go up under Starmer?
I think it would be hard for it to go up. I think it will be maintained. Starmer's spoken about safe and legal routes. That's his answer. As opposed to stopping the boats from coming over, provide safe and legal routes. And we know that traditionally Labour have been a lot more open to the idea of open borders than the Conservatives had. And the last time the centrists from Labour were in, they changed the country forever. Not just with regard to immigration, but also launching wars, changing the way this country is viewed across the world, and also the way that we function as a democracy, as the way that our politics actually functions, was changed by Tony Blair. And I don't know when we're going to recover from it.
And what do you think, too, when we talk about the Labour Party, one of the key challenges to the Labour Party now will be the rise of what I would call the organised Muslim vote. So whether that's you've seen all these people now going into the Green Party, you've seen lots of people standing as independents on things like Gaza. We've just been talking about George Galloway's party as well. I think that Labour perhaps didn't see that one coming.
In terms of sectarian voting, I think that's always the risk, particularly for a party like Labour that likes to play identity politics. So promoting the idea that you should vote for us because you're from a minority community entrenches people's idea of belonging to that community, and it hastens the prospect of political parties around religion or around our groupings. I think it's very dangerous. I think it's something that Labour has walked into.
But it's deeper than that, though, isn't it? Because the whole situation that's unfolding and escalating in Gaza, that is something that's held deeply by many people, not just of a particular religious leaning, but much broadly than that. People want there to be a ceasefire, and it seems to be for a lot of people that this is one of their, we saw it in the locals, it was one of their primary driving motivations when selecting who to vote for.
Well, it seems like not a very smart reason to base your decision on for a local election, an international issue. But I think for a lot of people, they saw it as a way to, in the moment, make their voices heard.
So you don't think that'll translate to a general election?
I don't think so. Not to the same extent. Maybe there's a possibility of a few seats. If the demographics of the country changed going forward, it could be that sectarian politics is something very, very real in the future. But right now, for this next election, I don't think it's going to impact.
Do you think it'll impact the Generals?
It's down to the politicians and how they take advantage of it. I think if you had a stellar political leader with a well-resourced, well-funded organisation, they could take 15, 20 seats off Labour.
Really?
But that
on what basis? On what issue?
Foreign policy, on a minimal economic agenda and foreign policy, populist rhetoric, basically what the Workers' Party's tried to do. I think you could do that in 15, 20 seats. Look at somewhere like Bethnal Green, which is going to be redrawn, but it'll still be that constituency where you have Rushanara Ali, Labour. That is Tower Hamlets first, Lutfur Rahman. I don't think he's going. Well, I know he's not going to stand as the candidate there. If he wanted to, he'd walk it. And so I think, actually, if you look at 2030, there are huge opportunities for individuals, parties to the left of Labour. Like I say, you don't need a massive agenda, minimal economic agenda of a socialist, quasi-socialist agenda, plus the foreign policy stuff, plus really go big on the rhetoric and the messaging. Like I say, 15, 20 seats.
Aaron, can I ask you, why do you think George Galloway and Jeremy Corbyn have not joined up?
Well, they're very different people. I know that Jeremy Corbyn... Yeah, well, I think they are very different people. I mean, George Galloway said this. George Galloway said to me that, you know, Jeremy Corbyn's a liberal. He cares about what you'd call identity politics, the green agenda. You know, George Galloway thinks we should forget fracking. He thinks we should get coal back. So it really is... It's a much bigger gulf than people think. Yes, they're very like-minded on foreign policy. Absolutely. And I think 20 years ago, actually, they sounded very similar. But again, as George Galloway said to me, he's gotten older, he's become more religious with age. There's a big gap there on social conservatism, the green agenda, identity.
Well, if the far left can't unite, then the chance of there being a left-wing party that's going to take seats is minimal right now, I think.
One of my viewers, Simon, says the so-called right of politics has gradually been shut down, Michelle, thanks to politically correct and diversity groups. Anyone now with a so-called different view is shut down and cancelled. Do you agree with that, Aaron?
I think cancel culture is a real thing. I think it has to be warded against left, right and centre. I think it exists across politics, by the way. And this is why I would want an enshrined constitutional right to free speech and freedom of association. I think in the era of social media and identity politics, you have to have it. And we have 68 million people in this country. Every single person needs a very small document that explains to them why other people have a right to say what they think. And we don't have that.
Juan?
I have to agree on that. I think freedom of speech is the bedrock of our society. And we are self-censoring as well. I think with the idea that people will be offended by our comments, we no longer say things that we used to say, and therefore society is becoming more insular and sensitive.
Why? What don't you say that you used to say?
Well, I'm not talking personally. I'm saying in general, we assume people will be offended by things actually that they're not. I think people are pretty broad-shouldered and they're happy to discuss things. Yeah.
I think way too many people get offended all the time. I think it's pathetic.
Well, look, there are those who very much enjoy taking offence, and it's also a way for them to make conversation. It's a way
It's very lucrative. Taking offence in this country is a very lucrative industry. You have like a whole, it's almost like a sub-economy set up with the people. All of these kind of groups that are anti-this and anti-this and diverse this and diverse that, all set up to, I'll come in and train you about how to do this, I'll give you advice about how to do that. I think it's very, very odd. One of my viewers has got in touch and said, Michelle, please will you stop talking? You're going on about Monty and they want me to stop. Apparently they say they absolutely love him, good on him for lifting the bar, and then good on him again for having the guts to leave. I'm not commenting on the guy. I don't know the guy. What I'm saying is, I mean, come on, grasp some basics. If you're going to go in and put your hat in the ring, which I applaud too, by the way, good. I think we need more people. Do a little bit of homework. I mean, that's not too much to ask, is it? I want to talk to you about migration, though, because the former Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, he's among a group of people who today have announced a 36-point plan for immigration. Have you seen this one, everybody? He's calling for a few different things. So he wants the cap to be to the tens of thousands when it comes to the number that can come into this country. He also wants the Home Office to split up. Give me your initial thoughts on this.
This is very, very exciting. It's 36 points. We're at 35 points. I might not be as excited.
I was about, are you actually really excited about this plan, or are you fibbing
This is
me?
election season, and we are pumping out policy ideas by the day, it seems. What I will say is that, for me, this is a red herring. We shouldn't be talking about the benefit of migration on the economy. I think we should be talking about the effects of migration on society. I think migration needs to be reduced significantly. Last year, over 600,000 people came here, net migration, which is completely unsustainable. And it means that we're unable to integrate at the same rate that people are actually migrating here. And when you have migration which is above the rate of integration, you risk ghettoization. And that's what we're starting to see. Our society is being impacted by the rate of immigration. And to talk about it purely...
But it's been like that for ages.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And producing 36 points, which lays out how we are going to deal with the migration crisis, which I think it's fair to call it, actually belies the fact that what we don't need is more bureaucracy. We've got far too many civil servants already. What we need is a willingness by the civil service and our justice system, our central government, every aspect of the people who rule our country to actually do something about this, to look at the amount of people who are coming here every year, the ability of our infrastructure to change, to meet those needs, and a decision with regard to the best interests of everybody who lives here. Well, there you go. Gary, he's been in touch and says the issue that you have on the right is there is no real leadership. He says the Conservatives have failed us and Richard Tice just doesn't seem to be it. He says you need Nigel Farage to come back and get stuck in. Mark, a viewer, has been in touch saying, can I just say that Matthew normally makes my head explode, but tonight is actually making sense. Mark, I don't know what programme you're watching, my friend, but there's nobody on this panel called Matthew. Look, I will be coming back after the break. There's Aaron Bastani, because I want his thoughts on this new migration plan. 36 points. We'll go through some of them, but do you reckon it'll make a blind bit of difference? Tell me. See you in 2.
Hello, good evening. It's been another dry and fine day for many of us, and there'll be more in the way of sunshine to come tomorrow, and it should be a warmer day for most of us. However, cloudier skies are starting to approach the northwest as this weather front moves in. Won't make too much progress overnight further elsewhere across the country as high pressure is building in, so it should be a fairly clear and dry night for the bulk of England and Wales. Cloudier skies will affect parts of northern England, Northern Ireland, and in particular much of Scotland, where the rain will turn quite persistent across the northwest overnight. So quite a damp night to come, probably a damp start to the day. But elsewhere, it should be a bright and mild start to the day. Quite widely, temperatures will be in double digits by Thursday morning. Any mist and fog that has formed overnight should clear quite readily. It's most likely across coastal areas across England and Wales, and that will give way to another day of long-lived sunny spells. And it's going to feel warmer in that sunshine than today. And the sunshine should spread up and further north into northwestern areas of Scotland as that weather front pushes north. Highs of 22, 23, possibly 24 degrees across central areas of England on Thursday. Again, there's a risk of mist and fog to start the day on Friday. The sunshine could be a bit hazy first thing, but it should brighten up quite quickly through the day. And I think most areas will see a day of long-lived sunny spells. And once again, it's going to be feeling fairly warm. Long-lived sunshine to come on Saturday. A risk of showers on Sunday, but temperatures are climbing towards 25 or 26 degrees.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner with the latest. Big problems up in Northumberland to the east of Hexham. The A695 remains shut between Riding Mill and Corbridge for recovery work after a tractor caught fire. Very slow out of Birmingham up the A38M, the Aston Expressway down to a single lane just off the M6 at Spaghetti because of a technical issue of queues that start well before Dartmouth Circus towards the city centre. On the Surrey stretch of the M25, the two outside lanes are blocked off anti-clockwise just after the M23 where a van's broken down. Queues back to the Reigate exit Junction 8. In Kent, the A26 at Tunbridge Wells is shut after a car transporter struck the bridge. And the train strike today means no service for Avanti West Coast, London North West and Chiltern Cross Country, East Midlands and West Midlands, and a significantly reduced service of GWR only running west of Reading. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hello everyone, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. I want to talk to you then about that conversation migration we're just having, this whole notion that we can even cap the numbers now to the tens of thousands. That ship, pardon the pun, has sailed, has it not? These are Robert Jenrick's and Co's 30-odd point plan as to what we're going to do to fix the issues.
Well, Robert Jenrick has ambitions of being, I think, leader of the Conservative Party.
He's got a new haircut, I noticed.
New haircut, snazzy dress sense, lost weight. It's all there. And now he's put the icing on the cake by talking about tens of thousands. Just as David Cameron did, just as Margaret Thatcher did, by the way, in 1979. That's how long the Tories have been using this precise line. Look, tens of thousands is what he's saying. We've had 1.3 million net migration in the last 2 years. There's obviously a huge gap between those two places. What I would say is that the UK right now has around net emigration of around 500,000. Now, of course, not all those people are Brits. But even if you go back to 1997, net emigration was around 200,000. We have a birth rate of 1.49, again, significantly lower than even 20 years ago. And what I don't like about this whole conversation is that people like Robert Jenrick aren't being honest about the costs of going to tens of thousands in terms of migration really quickly. What it would mean in terms of inflation, what it would mean in terms of collapsing higher education, because you'd have no students. And I don't think, like I say, he's being honest. There'll be massive, massive costs. If he said, within a decade, we can reach this point, I would say this isn't sloganeering. That's quite plausible, actually. But he's not done that. He's talking as if this can be executed next year, 2 years' time, with no downsides. There would be massive downsides. So I don't think he's being honest. I think it's electioneering.
I think it's a bit odd, though, bearing in mind that he was the immigration minister for a year. And actually, things were quite significantly out of control during that watch. So, you know, if you'd have managed to really positively grab a hold of these things, and yes, OK, you can argue it might have been going in the right trajectory, but notwithstanding that, it was off the scale. And if he'd have got a great track record, then I might have taken this a little bit more seriously.
Well, if he said, look, I think a good number in the short term is 250,000, 200,000, but I'd like it to be like this in 10 years' time after 2 parliaments, I'd say, OK, this sounds like somebody with a plan. You can agree or disagree. like you say, judge politicians by their actions, not their words. Priti Patel was the most liberal Home Secretary on migration this country's ever seen. Now, of course, if you had a speech from her, you would never think that. But she was a Home Secretary when 1.3 million people net migrated to this country over 2 years. So I would say judge Mr Jenrick, as with Ms Patel, on his actions, not his words.
One of my viewers, Chris, says a 36-point plan. Michelle, they can't even follow a one-step plan when it comes to the Rwanda plan. So why would we believe that this is any different? One of the other things that was suggested was perhaps breaking up the Home Office. And one of my viewers here says that would be an absolutely great idea. Sorry, the civil service, they're talking about, the viewer, that it would be an absolutely brilliant idea. You need to pull the civil service into line and do the job that we pay them to do, starting with perhaps returning to the office. What do you make to that suggestion about separating and breaking things up?
The thing is, the last thing we need is more bureaucracy. Everything is far too convoluted as it is. If we're going to have a department specific for migration and for making sure that our borders are protected and it meets it meets the objective that's been set out, absolutely. But I think we could be meeting these requirements now if there was genuine appetite in the Home Office and with regard to central government, as I said before already. So, by all means, split the Home Office if it will help, but I think we could actually be taking action now.
Well, he wants to split it because he wants to create a Department of Border Security and Immigration Control. Fascinating. Some people are getting in touch and saying, yeah, but Michelle, all the while that we're in the ECHR, you can have as many plans as you want, but you are going to be restricted by that. You make a very good point indeed. After the break, how far do you think you should be able to go to defend your property from being burgled? Give me your thoughts and I'll see you in 2.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the quaint Derbyshire village of Sudbury, there's a storm brewing between the local football club and the National Trust. This grass field might seem unremarkable, but for hundreds of years it's been part of the Sudbury Hall estate, playing host to the village football and cricket matches. Now the National Trust are planning to put an end to that tradition in the name of biodiversity, with plans for trees and plants where the football club play. Some worry it breaks a memorandum of wishes from the late Lord Vernon, whose family have lived here since 1660. Manager of Sudbury FC Tom Crutchley says he's upset at the decision.
Naturally disappointed. We've been here, this is our 9th year. We've put a lot of effort into here to keep playing, to maintain it. I'm from the village originally, so personally it was, it is very upsetting.
MP for Derbyshire Dales Sarah Dines says the National Trust aren't respecting the history of the site.
I feel they're trampling over the wishes of historic owners who gave up this wonderful site for the nation. And for over 100 years, people have played football and cricket here. It's incredibly sad. Incredibly sad. And it's against the wishes of a lot of people locally who've written to me from the village.
Sudbury Hall lives under the branding of the Children's Country House, a decision which Dines says is disrespectful to the history of the estate.
I mean, this is fake to make it into a children's theme park. It's almost a reimagining, and in fact, that's the very words it says on their website. The house is reopened, it's been reimagined. I don't want our heritage to be reimagined. I think the National Trust has been captured by people who have different ideas than most people in this country.
Whilst the public will still be able to roam these historic grounds, the village feels like a legacy is being snatched away. Jack Carson, GB News, Sudbury.
I'm Patrick Christies. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christies tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock alongside me, the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani, and the political commentator and social worker, Yosef David. Welcome back, everyone. Someone on Twitter has just got in touch with me and said, Michelle, you've completely misrepresented what George Galloway said to Aaron Bastani. Did I, Aaron Bastani? Because if I did, it wasn't intentional, by the way.
Look, not to the best of my understanding, in this interview, which people can watch on the Novara Media YouTube channel, he says that children in schools shouldn't be told that LGBT relationships are normal. And then I press him on that. Well, is that because of what reason? Do you mean they're not typical? He says, no, gay relationships aren't normal. I love them. I can be affectionate to them. I have staff who are LGBT. He won the Stonewall Award, I should say, in the 1990s.
He did. I saw him tweet that.
But he says they're not normal. And so I say, do you mean not typical? Because, of course, they're not typical. They're in a minority. And look, there's ambiguity there, but those are his words, and that's how it's been reported by Novara Media and elsewhere.
Well, there you go.
I don't want you to get, in trouble.
I stand corrected if I got that wrong. A story that caught my eye this week was a story about a farmer who's been accused of shooting dead someone that was apparently a suspected burglar. And it made me wonder, how far, I can't get into the specifics of this case because it's an ongoing legal situation, so I'll broaden it out and ask the principal more broadly. How far do you think you should be able to go to defend and protect your own property, your family within it?
So there's an idea of reasonable force, that there's an idea of defending yourself in line with the ability of the person who's coming into your house. That's kind of ambiguous in the moment. How are you supposed to know? But I would say there's the idea also that an Englishman's home is his castle, and one's right to protect their property is the basis of common law in this country. So we should all be able to go to bed at night confident that if we do defend ourselves, we're not going to be hauled before the courts. But I think particularly for farmers, because they're a small section of society that can own guns, we need some clarity around the law. Because I remember Tony Martin 20 years ago shot somebody and who was breaking into his house and ended up going to jail. There was a huge furore over it, and eventually he was released. And in all those years, we're still having these conversations about what someone can do to defend their own property.
Aaron?
No, I'd agree with much of that. What I would say is, if somebody's defending themselves, clearly they should use all reasonable force to defend themselves. In this particular instance, I think shooting two young people who are running away from the scene of the crime doesn't really constitute self-defence. But I'm sure that the judge, in terms of sentencing, if it goes that far, would think about that and dwell on that in terms of what kind of sentence this person will be looking at. Maybe it seems they've been the victim of repeated crimes. They won't necessarily be thinking in a particularly charitable way to those who've inflicted those crimes on them. In other instances of people being assaulted in their home and when they've taken somebody's life, defending themselves, I don't think that should be treated as manslaughter or murder. I think they shouldn't even spend one iota of 1 second in a prison cell. But we also have to remember that killing someone is worse than having things stolen from you. I hope that the judge, in this particular case, uses his consent.
Yeah, but I just want to say,
not always guaranteed.
If you get your house broken into, so you're fast asleep in bed, you might have your children or your loved ones or family members in your house, that complete violation of your privacy, of your personal space, just that disgraceful, despicable nature of having all of your stuff rifled through, it goes beyond and deeper than just having stuff stolen.
Well, I think that's a slightly separate point. So this is a farm.
I'm not talking about that. I've moved away from that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there.
I agree with you broadly.
I agree with you there. This seems to be people who are stealing things in a quasi-professional manner repeatedly from a working farm, and the farmer had enough. But you're right. I think somebody's home when their children are there, I can understand why people
Breaking into someone's home is one of the lowest...
I agree.
...of the low things that you can do. And I think often when people have that happen to them, they often can't even stay in their own home because the memories, the thought that some disgusting person has been rifling, rummaging through your cupboards, your drawers, they've been touching all of your things. A lot of people, they don't feel safe every time there's a rustle at the door or a bang. They can't settle down again. So then they have to leave their own home because of that.
Absolutely. I'm a social worker. I've worked with people whose homes have been burgled. I have seen people who have needed to leave their home. They've suffered nervous breakdowns. Having said that, I don't think that robbing someone's house, destroying their life, warrants the death penalty, as it were. I don't think the person deserves to die. But people would be less likely to take extreme action if they thought there was a chance that if they called the police, this person might get arrested. You know, if they did get arrested, they might serve some time in jail. We have a double pincer of weak laws that don't keep people in jail, and on the other side is the other claw of the pincer, is the absolute defunding and letting down of our rural police forces. And it just so happens it's a farmer. You can barely see a police patrol or something like that in rural areas, and it has had an impact, and people feel that they need to protect themselves.
Well, of course, and I think that we're going to see more and more of that, actually, because people don't feel that they can rely on, right, if I'm going to ring 999, this situation will be resolved in a timely manner. The majority of burglaries didn't actually reach a conviction or anything like that last year, and I don't think it's actually taken perhaps as seriously as it ought to be. Peter says, I've got a sign on my front window that says, if you're thinking of breaking into my home, first make peace with your maker, because you'll shortly be meeting him. Cool, blimey, Peter. I think perhaps people would think twice about entering your home. How far you're allowed to go to protect our property should be all the way, no ifs or buts, says John. But other people writing in and saying, but actually, hang on a second, because if that's the way, then anyone could just bring anyone into their house and do whatever they wanted to do under the guise of them being potentially a burglar. I'll leave you to ponder it overnight. Aaron, thank you very much for your time. Yosef, thank you for yours too. And you at home, I always appreciate your company, but don't go anywhere, because Nigel Farage is up next, and I'll see you tomorrow night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. It's been another dry and fine day for many of us, and there'll be more in the way of sunshine to come tomorrow, and it should be a warmer day for most of us. However, cloudier skies are starting to approach the northwest as this weather front moves in. Won't make too much progress overnight further elsewhere across the country as high pressure is building in, so it should be a fairly clear and dry night for the bulk of England and Wales. Cloudier skies will affect parts of northern England, Northern Ireland, and in particular much of Scotland, where the rain will turn quite persistent across the northwest overnight. So quite a damp night to come, probably a damp start to the day. But elsewhere, it should be a bright and mild start to the day. Quite widely, temperatures will be in double digits by Thursday morning. Any mist and fog that has formed overnight should clear quite readily. It's most likely across coastal areas across England and Wales, and that will give way to another day of long-lived sunny spells, and it's going to feel warmer in that sunshine than today. And the sunshine should spread up and further north into northwestern areas of Scotland as that weather front pushes north. Highs of 22, 23, possibly 24 degrees across central areas of England on Thursday. Again, there's a risk of mist and fog to start the day on Friday. The sunshine could be a bit hazy first thing, but it should brighten up quite quickly through the day. And I think most areas will see a day of long-lived sunny spells. And once again, it's going to be feeling fairly warm. Long-lived sunshine to come on Saturday. A risk of showers on Sunday, but temperatures are climbing towards 25 or 26 degrees.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner with the latest. Up in Northumberland, east of Hexham, the A695 remains closed on that stretch between Corbridge and Riding Mill. They're recovering a tractor that caught fire. Still very slow heading up the M6 through the West Midlands from junction 5 to 6 towards Birmingham after a van broke down, and queues out of Birmingham up Aston Expressway, the A38M towards the M6, where lanes closed near Dartmouth Circus. On the Hertfordshire stretch of the M25, the inside lanes closed clockwise, junction 22 to 23. A lorry's broken down through the roadworks towards the A1M, and on the Surrey stretch, the two outside lanes are blocked off anti-clockwise just after the M23 after a van broke down queues back to Reigate. Industrial action today means there are no trains across the networks of Avanti West Coast, London North West and Chiltern Cross Country, East Midlands and West Midlands. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. But you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.